Friends, this is The Reading Room. I'm Jeff Cook. Hey, given the number of people who have started listening to us, specifically on this feed, the Reading Room feed, I wanted to just give a quick reintroduction to myself, my work, and why we're going through this particular book, Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart. I taught philosophy. I taught philosophy for 15 years at the University of Northern Colorado. Stepped out of the philosophy department after COVID. It was just time for me to do something else. I had accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish at the university, and I really got into this material, Enneagram. I got into human motivation, talking about motivation, not just intellectually, because I'm a philosopher, but Enneagram ended up making a huge difference in my life, the life of my family. Many of my relationships benefited from the insights that were derived from jumping into Enneagram, and so I've really dedicated a lot of myself to it. My own sense of self, we're going to talk a lot about comparison today. My own sense of self, comparing myself to what's come before, is that we're kind of at the end, or have already experienced the end, of a huge Enneagram wave. That wave started somewhere in the middle teens, 2015, 2014-ish, really crested, pushed with Stabile's work, Road Back to You and the rest. Drove a lot of interest into Enneagram, both in the business community, Instagram world. These sorts of things I thought were really valuable. I got caught up in it, and we started our podcast during that time. But that's not who I am, and that's not who we are. That wave, it seems to me, is coming to an end. And presently, we're at a spot where we're kind of asking, what's next? What's next for Enneagram? And this has been this is something that we've seen in the past. Enneagram just comes in waves. And so right now we're kind of waiting for what's next. In my view, there's a lot to be said about Enneagram and scholarship coming up. So specifically with stuff that we're seeing in the neurosciences and in the social sciences. So the reading room conversation that I've started here is focusing, our first two books are on that. The first book that we looked at was Dr. Daniel Siegel's book, Personality and Wholeness in Therapy, diving into the neuroscience behind how human motivation works, how it is anchored in the pathways of our nervous system from very early on, and that our motivations come out of spaces that are developed in utero, fashioned in our earliest years of development, and stay with us for the rest of our lives. And why that's the case, why it's the case that our early experiences really shape our motive, how we see the world, interpret it, what propels us. So important. That's going to be the scientific side, the biological side. There's another way to come to the scholarship, and it's with what Brené Brown is doing. Obviously, Brown is a very popular writer, podcaster, presenter of information on human beings, the human experience, and our emotions. But she is a scholar, and she's bringing receipts. She is coming to the topic, having done the study and commenting on a wide variety of human emotions and experiences. All of these overlap with motive because it seems to me so much of our emotional life and feelings are going to flow from the initial experience of the world. So we are taking in the world through those three centers, through our head, through our body, through our hearts. And when we take in the world, it produces in us our rich, vast, kaleidoscopic emotional life. All of us, given how we are wired, our neural pathways and Siegel's work, how we are wired, are going to take in the experiences of our world in very different ways. And those will produce emotions for us, but those emotions, even though we can all perhaps talk about anxiety or talk about anger, talk about all of the different emotions that she's going to reference, we're each going to experience them in different ways and give them different weight, and they will be given different values given who you and I are. This is why this study has been really important to me. I don't have a very rich vocabulary when it comes to emotions. This is really challenging for me. And so it may be the case that knowing that this is a kind of a blind spot, we might spend a lot of time in this. Which brings us to chapter 2 of Brené Brown's book, Friends. I didn't get out of the first 3.5 pages. My 15 quotes, I'm going to quote the book 15 times at just comment. It's all just the first sub chapter, which is on comparison. So we're in chapter 2. I would love to invite you to jump into just this little section, and maybe we can just go deep into this. That probably is not going to be the case with the rest of this book, but comparison ends up being a huge element of Enneagram, and well worth us pausing and really doing business, not only if you're a heart type, and not only think about heart types, because comparison is going to just be a dominant category for 2s, 3s, and 4s, but comparison will have an anchor in all of the types and our experiences, and it's well worth saying. So chapter 2, places we go when we compare, is this chapter, and I'm just going to sit on the first 3.5 pages. She starts with a great little illustration about swimming. She's an athlete. She does her exercises swimming, and she says this about being in the pool. I can catch myself racing the person next to me, or comparing our strokes, or figuring out who has the best work set. When I go into comparison, I completely lose the meditation and alone time I need. Dominant word for me there is loss. Comparison may be valuable, and we're going to talk about the value of comparison by the end. But at the outset, she wants to talk about how comparison has power over us. And often it's the case that when we compare ourselves with others, we can lose ourselves. Our eyes move from our interior life to the lives of others. That's obviously part of what comparison is. It's relational in the sense that we don't compare ourselves with trees. We don't compare ourselves with buildings. I should be as strong, as enduring as that building. We don't compare ourselves with any other objects. We do compare ourselves with other people. And so that heart-centered side of things really needs to come out here. In our workshop, we just did a second Saturday workshop. We were talking about affect groups, how human beings connect. Katie Whitlock brought something forward that really was choice in my mind and heart, and it was about renaming the feeling center. 2s, 3s, and 4s are in the quote-unquote feeling center in a lot of folks' language. And what we're learning from this book, and what Katie wanted to point out, is feelings are widespread. There's feelings related to the head center. There's feelings related to the body center. We've seen this so far in our study here. Feeling center is not a good term for that space. She wanted to suggest it could be that we called this the people center, because it's so relational that we are in fact taking in the world exclusively through a people-oriented framework. This would make sense. You and I are mammals. We are born into social environments, and those social environments and our connection with other human beings is key to our survival. It's no surprise that our nervous system is wired to be in relationship, and that a third of our our nervous system at the minimum is geared toward our human connections. People center. Love that. We could talk about the relational center or the heart center as well. Might use Siegel's term. Maybe it's the bonding center. But that's worth holding in for a moment, really emphasizing that the heart is about others. Now, for those of you who are 2s, 3s, and 4s, you may know that intuitively. For some of us, it's like, oh, I need to understand that a little bit more. So at least that's how I stumbled into that. So wanted to elevate that. Quote number 2, it's the middle of 18. Comparison is actually not an emotion. She made a distinction real early on in the intro that she was going to be talking about emotions and experiences. Comparison apparently is an experience. And later in the chapter, she's going to say it's an experience that you can't control, that comparison is something that happens to you, in her view. I find that interesting. We're going to talk about that. Comparison is actually not an emotion, but it drives all sorts of big feelings that can affect our relationships and our self-worth. More often than not, social comparison falls outside of our awareness. We don't even know we're doing it. McLuhan, we don't know who discovered water, but we know it wasn't a fish. We don't even know that we're comparing ourselves. This lack of awareness can lead us to showing up in ways that are hurtful to ourselves and others. All of the experiences in this section are connected to comparison, so we're going to talk about other emotions. And the goal is to raise our awareness about how and why they happen so we can name them. Man, that is Enneagram right to the core. We're going to name how we're filtering the world. We're going to name them, we're going to think about them, we're going to make choices that reflect our values and our heart. A couple big things here for me. One, I need to do some better work with the vocabulary. Obviously, this book, a lot of what this book is trying to do is create a lexicon for emotions. But even like at a meta level, we need to talk about what is an emotion, what is a feeling, what are experiences. Some of that, I may have gone way too fast through those ideas, categories, philosopher that I am. You gotta knuckle down your terms here up front, or else you're going to get lost. So I need to do a better job of that. So on Tuesday, perhaps we can talk about that. What is an emotion? What is a feeling? What is an experience? What are the big categories that she's naming? That's number one. Number two here for me is something that we're going to see a lot in the beginning of this chapter, and it's that when we think about our experiences, when we think about our emotions, it gives us control. She seems to push into that quite a bit. And I think that that is a healthy, worthy way to go. What is the relationship with our analysis to our emotional life? How do those work? That's really worth talking about. Now, with Siegel's work, just to bring Dr. Siegel's stuff back in, the balancing that takes place when we're able to elevate multiple centers, that matters. So when I'm able to elevate not only my emotional life, because my connection with other human beings matters, but to pair it with elevating my thought life, my thinking, that's going to create a balance. I can think through my emotions, how they're affecting me, what emotions, feelings, experiences, how they ought to be interpreted. That's actually a big thing here. It's so one that I'm gonna judge things naturally and say this is a good emotion, this is a bad emotion. It's not necessarily where she wants to go. It seems like she wants to say what's the proper place for these emotions, and that's a much healthier way to go in my mind. What are we learning from these emotions? That seems to be a great little posture, which is sometimes explicitly said, sometimes not, but the emotions are happening. The experiences are happening. Pause. What are they communicating to you about life, about your place in the world, about your relationships? That seems to me really a worthy way to go. So, understanding that you're an emotional being, you're made with to experience these sorts of experiences of comparison. The goal is to raise our awareness. Why are they happening? Think about them, and then posture ourselves, make choices that reflect our values and hearts. That seems wise. That seems like being a self-actualized person, not being controlled by your emotions, but exerting some sense of, who do I want to become? It's not just agency, like you want to be controlled by your emotion. You don't want to be controlled by your emotions. I think there's something more here. It's more, we are made to be happy, flourishing human beings, in my view, and making choices about our emotions matters towards that end. That's our proper function. That's what we're like. If you live a thriving life, it's going to look something like that. Quote 3. She quotes some researchers at the bottom of 13. They describe how we use comparison not only to evaluate past and current outcomes, past and current, but to predict future prospects. This means significant parts of our lives, including our future, are shaped by comparing ourselves to others. Past, present, future. You guys will know that that's a buzzword set for me. So orientation to time matters. Comparison, I want to associate with the past because obviously I want to associate comparison primarily with the heart center, with the people center. You're taking in the world through the relational past in comparison, but using that information will propel you into the past tools, present tools, future tools, especially given your types. So let me just talk about 2s, 3s, and 4s for a second here, because 2s are going to use the comparative past to inform what they should do in the present. They are externally processing. They are earners. They are doing a lot of their business reactively, taking in, that comparative information is gonna propel a lot of their present movement. It's gonna be different for 4s, who will primarily be using past tools, taking in the world through that past filter, what has happened, how they can think about all the relational experiences that they've had and comparative experiences that they've had, and using past tools. What has happened? What are the beauties I see? What are the negatives I see? How do I understand all that has gone on in the world to bring some understanding to all of the comparative past that I'm experiencing? That allows me to get my sense of self, identity, value, and that seems to me natural, worthy, well worth naming once I get an understanding of who I am given my past tools. With that comparative information being processed through the past tools, then I can begin to engage the world in my body. That seems really worthwhile to me. So they describe how we use comparison not only to evaluate past and current outcomes, but to predict future prospects. All of that seems to be that natural movement that takes place through all of us. Take in the world, and then we respond to the world. Given our types, 3s are going to be primarily interested in predicting future prospects. So much of a 3's inner life is going to be, this is what has happened in the relational past, comparative past. This is where I was judged. This is where I found value. This is where, specifically where I didn't win, where it didn't feel like I was gaining, taking hold, meriting the attention I desired. So how do I win next Thursday? What are my future prospects, as it were? Engaging those future tools. Now, it seems to me, and we could probably talk about this, I would be real curious if everybody can use future, past, and present tools to get their motive fulfilled. But some of us just have an easier time engaging the past, engaging the present, engaging the future. This is all worth really talking through, but here, the language of orientation of time just really matters. And we could highlight, again, just how this works with each of the types. So, quote 4, this is page 20. Here's my definition of comparison. This will be helpful. I like definitions. Comparison is the crush of conformity from one side and competition from the other. It's trying to simultaneously fit in and stand out. Woo! Comparison is the crush of conformity from one side and competition from the other. It's trying to simultaneously fit in and stand out. Later on, she says, comparison says, be like everyone else, but better. One that I am. I do like the concept of being better. The crush of conformity feels like an emotion, but she says it's not an emotion. It's something that happens to us. So I would want to elevate again that you're a mammal, that you're made for being in community, and that's part of the thriving life is the relational life. That I think happiness is absolutely, your happiness is absolutely dependent, in my view, on connecting with other human beings. I think the idea that no man is an island, it resonates with me. I think it would be very, 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 very difficult to be a happy person on an island by yourself. I mean, even on that island, you probably need a volleyball to talk to. There is something about us that longs for community. The question isn't whether or not we can isolate and be happy. The question is whether or not we are healthy human beings in community or unhealthy human beings in community. Comparison is apparently going to just be part of that dynamic. And well worth, again, continuing to unpack as she's going through it. I love her setup here. So, quote 5, when we compare, we want to be the best or have the best of our group. The comparison mandate becomes the crushing paradox of fit in and stand out. It's not be yourself and respect others for being authentic. It's fit in, but win. I want to swim this same workout as you and beat you at it. There is the negative of comparison. It's in her language here, it feels like the opposite of authenticity. I want to say there's two ways to fall off a horse. There's like being utterly authentic to yourself, separate yourself from all others. I and I alone matter. It's probably not a healthy way to be in the world. But so too, obviously, if everything you do is about comparison, if everything you do is about reacting to those around you, that's also not a healthy way to be. Finding that moderate middle ground, and moderation is a primary virtue. Finding that moderate middle ground of being in relationship with oneself and with others, this matters. She has a couple of suggestions on this front and may unpack it more as the chapter proceeds, and I'm not sure about that. But one of the suggestions she's going to have is just celebrating others. In taking a posture of celebrating others, you naturally move away from comparison in that you are elevating the standing value and accomplishments of others without reference to yourself and whether or not you're there, but naturally elevating another. That seems like a very, very healthy way to go. I'll talk more about that, but here in this, fit in but win, I think she's right to say there is a negative element that can be here. So wrestling with that, well worth our time. 6th quote, when we engage in upward social comparison, she's quoting someone here. When we engage, this is Alicia Norte. When we engage in upward social comparison, we compare ourselves to someone who is perceived to be or performing better than we are. In contrast, when we engage in downward social comparison, we compare ourselves to someone who is perceived to be or performing worse than we are. The direction in the comparison doesn't guarantee the direction of the outcomes. Both types of social comparison can result in negative and positive effects. Love this. She's acknowledging that comparison isn't necessarily altogether unhealthy. There is a positive element to it. There can be a negative element to it. Doing business with your comparative mindset matters. And so she continues on page 21. Social comparisons can make us happy or unhappy. Upward comparison can inspire or demoralize us, whereas downward comparison can make us feel superior or depress us. This is quoting researcher Frank Fujita. Again, that image, upward comparison, inspire or demoralize. Downward comparison, superior or depress us. Naming the fruit, I think, is really valuable here in terms of how we're coming to our comparative experiences. Comparison, as it were, then, is more like a tool that is being employed, and perhaps, again, an experience that we can't avoid because we're social animals. What you do with the tool matters. What you do with the experience matters. And that's the question. Like, what are you doing with the things that happen to you? Real helpful in my mind. All right, this next one's a money line. In general, she writes, frequent social comparisons are not associated with life satisfaction or the positive emotions of love and joy, but are associated with, and she's naming them, the negative emotions of fear, anger, shame, and sadness. You will notice the triad there: fear for the head, anger for the body, shame and sadness for the heart. She is naming them in the same way that Dr. Siegel does, as negative emotions, as emotions that we seek to alleviate, push against. I mean, I suppose we would probably need to do some business with negativity here. But she writes, these are important findings because regardless of the different outcomes, in the end, comparing ourselves to others leads us to fear, anger, shame, and sadness. Worth holding in tension there, that that comparison is going to bleed into all three centers and the primary underlying feelings of us all. So this is a powerful, powerful experience that we have. And again, her move is to say something of the effect of, like, what are you going to do with it? Perhaps thinking about it matters. Acting in certain ways, for example, giving praise to others matters. These, like, what are the solutions to comparison, the negative elements of comparison, really worth talking about. So, quote 9, this is page 21. Here's what makes all this really tough. Many social psychologists consider social comparison something that happens to us. Fujita writes, from this perspective, when we are presented with another person who is obviously better or worse off, we have no choice but to make a social comparison. It can be hard to hear an extremely intelligent person on the radio, or see an extremely handsome one in the grocery store, or participate on a panel with an expert without engaging in social comparison, no matter how much we would like not to. Even if we do not choose whether or not to make a comparison, we can choose whether or not to let that comparison affect our mood or self-perception. Again, you can't escape the experiences that you have. You can't escape judgment. What you do once you find yourself judging, that's what matters. I think that's gracious. This is natural. You're just going to judge people. Can't escape it. According to Genesis, it's part of your fall. This is who you are. What do you do with it now? Quote 11. As someone who can fall prey to comparing myself and my life to edited and curated Instagram feeds, I laughed so hard when he told me that due to the physics of how grass grows, when we peer over our fence, this is a friend of hers, somebody that she did a podcast with, when he told me that due to the physics of how grass grows, when we peer over our fence at our neighbor's grass, it actually does look greener, even if it is truly the same lushness as our own grass. I mean, does it get better than that? The grass actually does look greener on the other side, but that means nothing comparatively because it's all perspective. Big philosophical word there. Perspective and subjectivity and value judgments and biases and how we are taking in the world through the lens that is ourself from a certain place and time. There is no view from nowhere. There is only the view from here where I am standing, giving my race, my nationality, my gender, my education, my net worth, etc. All of these affect how we see the world and the values that we bring to it. All of the traumas that we've experienced, all of the social interactions that we've had leading up to this point that inform what we think about other human beings all form this perspective. Objectivity is incredibly difficult to nail down. What there is a perspective from somewhere, and that somewhere is you and the filter through which you experience reality. Is the grass greener? It's going to depend on your filter and how you think about that. And it may be the case that you look at the grass on the other side and say, yes, it is greener. But that value judgment of assessing this and this, comparing, is going to come through the filter we call you. And of course, what do you do with that experience of comparison will be all over what she's going to say to land the plane here. She's got good news and bad news for us. Since we're talking about the Bible, bad news and good news, that's fun. So the bad news is that our hardwiring makes us default to comparison. It seems to happen to us rather than to be our choice. Bad news, we've already talked about this. This is the human condition. You cannot help but compare yourself with others. Neural pathways, baby. This is just how your nervous system works. I think that matters. It allows, especially self-judgmental people like myself, it gives us a little bit of permission to not be hard on ourselves when we find ourselves in that comparative frame of mind. But she got good news. Good news, page 24, is that we get to choose how we're going to let it affect us. Affect is a big word. We're going to get to choose how we're going to let it affect us. I'm going to actually pause here. Affect comes from an ancient word that has to do with fashioning a statue, blows that fashion a statue. We affect something, we beat it, we mold it, we fashion it into something. Here, there is energy coming at us through comparison. How are we going to allow that energy to shape us, mold us, transform us? Good news is we get to choose how we're going to let these comparisons affect us. If we don't want this constant automatic ranking to negatively shape our lives, our relationships, and our future, we need to stay aware enough to know when it's happening and what emotion it's driving. Big thing for me so far in this book study has been emotions are information. Emotions are telling us something. The emotion is communicating something to me that I need to do business with. Somehow my nervous system is throwing something forth into my perception, into my, what would you call that? Into my field of consciousness, saying, this matters. This needs some time, some energy. You need to do something with this. That's been real helpful for me. What is the emotion communicating? My new strategy, quote 14 for me. My new strategy is to look at the person in the lane next to me and say to myself, as if I'm talking to them, have a great swim. That way I acknowledge the inevitable and make a conscious decision to wish them well and return to my swim. So far, it's working out pretty well. Judgment. Judgment is happening to us all the time. If you read the Sermon on the Mount, I did a book on the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus talks a lot about judgment. His solution to the judgment problem is identical here. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. That is the solution to the judgment problem. That's all Matthew 6. That's how Matthew 6 unfolds. The middle section. When I find myself in comparison, a fantastic posture is to push further into the relational connection. I'm seeing somebody. I'm understanding somebody. Part of the thing about comparison is it's incredibly difficult to understand who you are without comparing yourself to another. You know, if the only color that existed was red, color wouldn't exist. It's that red exists because yellow exists and because green exists and because purple exists. We can name red only because of comparison. Knowledge itself requires comparison. Language does the hard work of differentiation of this and that. Is obviously its negative side effects on ourselves, on our hearts, on our connections with others. So how do you get past that? Love this idea. I am comparing myself with others. I can also say this person is winning. This person is thriving. They're doing something amazing and worthwhile. and I can celebrate that. What a fantastic posture. And how building that would be. I've really tried to make it a habit recently to text people more, to send voice notes more to people who are important to me, and to tell them that I listened to their work. I listened to a podcast they had, or I read their book, or, I saw a presentation they made, and just to celebrate it, to say, you're winning. I'm so proud of you. And it's not about me in that moment, but it's just elevating the other. That has been one of the best ways that I found to connect with others personally. I'm just talking personal strategy here. And it may not even, I don't know what it does for them. Hopefully it elevates them, but it's just been so good for my heart on these fronts, because it actually takes me out of that, that vortex of self-focus where you can just consistently, especially as a one for myself, just self-analyze, self-critique, and allow anger to destroy some of my insides and my soul. Love her suggestion here. What do you do with the comparison you can't possibly escape? Well, we're talking about. So that's my take on this. We're just going to hit these first 3.5 pages, and then we'll get into envy and jealousy and resentment and all the other fantastic emotions that come in the second chapter next week. I did want to obviously sit on this for a bit, and just because I found it so valuable. So come with some fresh thoughts. We can go much further into Enneagram when we meet Tuesday. Obviously, if you want to connect with us, go to aroundthecircle.org. If you want to be part of our online discussion, we meet Tuesday nights. The links will all be posted with this episode at aroundthecircle.org. Find the links, sign up for a membership, join us. Again, our memberships, think of them as gym memberships for your heart and soul. You're going to do some exercises. You're going to do some heavy lifting with some other people talking about your inner life, and we want to have you. We want you to join us. We want to hear your perspective on all of these things, and we want to grow together. So that's what I got. Friends, if you got this far, you're a treasure to me. I appreciate you investing not only in Dr. Brown's work, I appreciate you investing in my work. I see you, and I'm really grateful for you. So may all good things be yours.